everybody. Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 542. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, hello, sir. How are you?
Doing good, doing well. You know, the weather's gotten super nice. So
has it, or did it?
Yeah. No. It's you might be surprised, but it's been in like the mid 70s all week, and that's just made prime dog walking weather, which is one of the few acceptable reasons to leave the house these days.
It is. Thank goodness for Julie, I suppose. Yeah. You cooked anything good?
I made I grilled a spatchcock chicken yesterday for
I saw the picture of that. That is the way to make a chicken, by the way. Oh my goodness.
So for those who don't know what that is, basically it's kind of like if you took a chicken and you cut it down the middle but didn't quite cut all the way through and then just like spread it open. So
yeah, it's also called butterflying as well.
Yeah, that's probably that's a less outrageous sounding name. But basically what it lets you do is it was marinated in garlic and rosemary for like 2 days. So basically what it lets you do is get the whole chicken onto the grill. So you get to grill one side, then flip it over, grill the other side, so it's nice and crispy. I almost screwed it up though, because I didn't really like, throwing chicken breasts on the grill. They take 15 minutes or whatever, right? So I put that and all the other stuff I was grilling, and then I was like, let me just check how long it takes to cook through. And it's like, 45 minutes for a whole chicken. So I had to take everything else off the grill because I had put some jalapenos and some broccoli and carrots and onions on the grill. But I'm like, wait, these all take 5 to 15 minutes each. So let's not put these in at the same time. But it was fine.
That's right. Well, on the show this week, we've got our format rundown for Ikoria. Normally we do like a first impressions type show, but the set's been out long enough and enough games have been played that we're ready to jump right into the deep end of the pool here with the format rundown. So we're going to be going over the broad strokes of the format, and in fact, also getting into some of the details on some of the archetypes and ways to play this format. Because, boy, I'll tell you, this first stretch has revealed a lot about the format in a very quick amount of time, and you need to know these things if you're going to succeed in this format, period. This is one of the most punctuated openings to a format I can remember. So we're going to get into that today. Before we do, got to mention our sponsor, Channel Fireball. ChannelFireball.com is the place to go for everything you need on the internet. Now, in these weird times, everything's changing, everything's crazy, but CFB is doing their very best to keep up and keep the doors open and hoping for that day when everything can get back to normal and get back to business for Channel Fireball. But again, rolling out some cool stuff over from CFB. One of them, of course, has been the Magic Fest online tournaments. These are played primarily on Arena, and you can watch them 24/7 coverage over at twitch.tv/Channel Fireball, which has been, boy, a real godsend. I have to say, just as a Magic fan and also as a commentator, right? Just having an opportunity to commentate some high level matches, while we're all kind of stuck at home has been great. And then also very comforting, just having that background that that you can turn on the CFB stream and have some fun with it and watch some cool commentators and see some good games of Magic being played has been really cool. And then, of course, the big announcement a few weeks ago now, CFB Pro is now fully out there into the world. You can check out all the details on that. There's a link in the show notes for it. But the broad strokes is that there's a few different ways you can pay for it. I think the sweet spot, at least from my viewpoint, is the $10 a month option, because then you get that back in store credit. And so if you were going to buy $10 worth of stuff monthly on Magic, which, come on, that's 3 booster packs or whatever it is, it adds up pretty quick, then you're basically getting it for free and you get access to even more content and even more in-depth stuff. Look, content creation is an expensive and cumbersome process, and it does require sometimes that extra oomph. And look, if it's not on the cards for you to sign up for CFB Pro, that's okay. There's still plenty of free content, including the videos and stuff over at Channel Fireball. So something for everybody over there at Channel Fireball. So please do check them out. Also, the patreon.com/limited resources, been just super awesome. Really felt supported by our community during this stretch. We've got a bunch of new patrons, which is really touching, especially given the uncertainty around jobs like ours right now. And so that's been great. One of the things that I've been trying to concentrate on as well is recognizing that content creation is actually really important, especially during times like this where there's a sort of base level of stress that a lot of people are feeling that they might not normally feel. And that means that, you got to get your mind off of it and get your mind onto something that you like every once in a while, just to give yourself a little bit of a break. And I've been doing that with a lot of my hobbies, including magic and watches and basketball and stuff like that. And I recognize our role in that as well. So I've done some extra videos, some bonus videos. I did a bonus episode with Ryan Spain, and I've got a couple more bonus episodes in the works as well. I put a post up on the Patreon for our patrons to be able to ask, but I'm going to be doing an interview with kind of a higher up from Wizards of the Coast as a bonus episode about human drafting on Arena. And maybe even some other arena related questions. It is a Wizards interview, so it's a little bit curated. I can't just throw the big heaters out there. But I'm reaching out to our patrons to see what kind of questions they want answered, and then I'm going to see what I can get done. At any rate, I want to thank everybody who's on the Patreon. It really means the world to us to support us even during tough times like this. And I just wanted to say thanks for that and look forward to more bonus content coming from your buddies here at LR. All right. First things first, question of the week comes from one of our patrons, Daniel, who says, what's your favorite deck you've ever drafted? Mine is when I was able to pick a World Knit in Conspiracy draft. Not bad. I'll let you think on that one, Luis, just whatever pops to mind. I mean, come on, you've drafted so many times, and I've drafted so many times. Our absolute favorite deck, I probably wouldn't even remember. But I do remember my favorite board state that my deck produced. And this was in a cube, and I got myself to a position where I had ultimated Venser the Planeswalker. And this was the one, and I believe the ultimate was whenever you cast a spell, you can exile permanent. Does that sound right to you?
Yep, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so I ultimated that Venser, but then I realized that the only spell I had left in my hand, I mean, I had tons of mana and all that kind of stuff, was Mana War, my favorite card. But the cool part is that Mana War was printed in a day when they weren't quite so conscious of bounce your opponent's stuff or target a thing your opponent controls. It just says return target creature to its owner's hand. So I could play Mana War, exile a permanent, have it come into the battlefield and just return itself. And so for every awesome. 3 mana, I just got to vindicate stuff. And that's kind of I feel like I peaked, I look back at that moment and I'm never really quite got there again. Those were the old days, but that has to be my favorite. The deck that produced that moment is my favorite draft deck ever. Anything pop to mind for you?
Yeah, for sure. This is a recent deck as a cube draft I did 2 days ago because I streamed cube before it left, and I drafted mono black Reanimator, but I had it was the dream. It was I had Black Lotus, I had a Mox Pearl, I had Entomb, I had Reanimate, I had Gristlebrand. But the part that really put it over the top is because I had Black Lotus and Dark Ritual, and I'd picked up a Yawgmoth's Will, I ended up playing Lion's Eye Diamond, Cabal Ritual, and Tendrils of Agony in my mono black deck, and I got a bunch of turn 2 kills, turn 1 Entomb, turn 2 Shallow Grave the Gristlebrand, attack, draw 21 cards, Lotus Ritual, Yawg Will Tendrils you out.
Oh, that's insane.
And it was wild. I streamed this, and the videos will be going up, actually, because I'm going to have our editor cut them up because they were so good. I had a match where I ended up killing my opponent by playing Gonti to deck them.
Oh, really?
But
that's sweet.
But the way that happened was I had to attack with Murderous Rider to gain 2 life so I could activate Gristlebrand for 7, which couldn't attack because they had a big Stone Coil Serpent in play. Gristlebrand Ritual Tendrils them, not for lethal, but enough that I could Gristlebrand again after Imperial Sealing for Gonti to play Gonti to deck. It was just, it was kind of insane. Peak cube. So this definitely my favorite deck over the last couple months for sure.
Oh, that is amazing. Yeah, that's great. Great question, Daniel. Thank you for that. All right, we're going to do a Crack-A-Pack, but of course I don't have actual physical packs in hand because, well, you can't get them right now. So I have fired up Arena, and I'm just going to jump into, I guess, a traditional draft. Wait, I need to do one that's against bots, don't I? Otherwise, I'll be sitting here drafting the whole time. What is the one against that's bots called now?
I don't know. Quick Draft or something like that?
I think that is. Yeah, there it is. Oh, but it's Core Set 2020.
Yeah.
All right. I really want to do a Crack-A-Pack for this.
Can you just open a pack?
That only has like 8 cards in it, right?
Oh, here, here's what I'll do. I'll open a pack.
You have one on Magic Online, maybe?
I'm on Magic Online right now. I'm not playing.
Just coincidentally, you happen to already have Magic Online open.
I was recording a video before this happened. Oh, wait, I don't have any Ikoria packs on Magic Online. Okay, how about this? I have a compromise. I will open a pack of Ikoria on Magic Online in a draft, and then we'll continue the show.
Oh no! And there goes Luis. All right, well, we got to get a Kraken pack in here. I mean, this is not optional. I mean, I could have just done this.
Look! I've got this. All I want to do is open. I just opened a pack here on Draft Sim, so I'll take us through this pack.
Okay, you do that.
All right. Our first common is Survivor's Bond, the 1 in a green sorcery that lets you raise it a human, non-human, or both. Mm-hmm. That card is okay. It actually can be really powerful, but between that and Corpse Churn and the various green-black reanimation effects, you're not really lacking for this, and you certainly wouldn't want to take it too early before you know which direction you're going.
Yeah, there's a lot of reanimate in this set, and it goes well with those big cyclers.
Yeah. It can be nice. You can cycle your Lava Serpent early and then pick it up kind of for free later, especially if you have humans to pick up. Mained Serval is next, the 2-mana 1/4 Vigilance, which you really only play if you have a lot of Mutate or Vigilance that needs to be activated, or in like a Lurrus deck, but clearly you're not taking that here.
Because it's a cat or whatever.
Yeah, and Lurrus wants the 2-drops. All 2-drops or less. So this is one of the cards that just ends up making the cut most of the time. Of One Mind is next, the divination that you can cast for only 1 mana if you have a human and a non-human. I have found this card to just be okay. Divination, sadly, I don't want to admit it, but is behind the power curve these days. So straight up divination is not a card I think you generally want to play in most decks, but in a deck that does a good job of meeting the requirement of human plus non-human, it can be pretty good. Next up, we've got Almighty Brushwag, which actually plays out pretty nicely. The 1 mana 1 trample that you can pay 4 mana to give +3/+3 because it's such a good mutate target. Mm-hmm. But I'm not seeing any card I would be even remotely satisfied first picking. We've got Hampering Snare. All your creatures or opponents' creatures get -2/-0 until in a turn with cycling 2. Again, not great. Crustacean, the 4 mana 1/6 flash. All right, here's a card which I wouldn't be ashamed to first pick. Greater Sandworm, 7 mana 7/7 with cycling 2.
Always been good in all of it.
Cycling on a monster is good, and it's even better in this format because of stuff like Back for More or Unbreakable Bond. The various put directly into play reanimation spells like cycle a Sandworm, and you on turn 5 you cast Bond, and you have a 7/7 lifelinker that's hard to block is pretty strong. Garrison Cat, 1 mana 1/1 that dies into a 1/1, not a very impressive card. Good in like Black-White Sacrifice, which is a deck, you get a couple Bushmeat Poachers and whatnot, and you're off to the races. Next up, we've got Corpse Churn, the instant that mills you for 3, and then you can cast Raise Dead. You get a creature back from your graveyard to your hand. Again, a fine playable card, and if you have high-quality creatures, especially good if you care about milling yourself, but not a great first pick. Right now, Greater Sandworm is winning. Next up is Cathartic Reunion, the 2 mana sorcerer where you discard 2 cards, then you draw 3. I actually like this card quite a bit because even in the cycling decks, you end up accumulating a bunch of lands once you've cycled a bunch. Having like a Cathartic Reunion in those decks that you can slow roll is really nice.
It's weird to run 13 or 14 lands in a deck and still feel like you're flooding all the time, but it does feel like that.
Yeah. Easy Prey, our first uncommon. 1 and a black, destroy target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less with cycling 2. Well, this is the card I would be taking right now. It's just a solid, flexible removal spell that cycles when you need it to. I guess it's not that flexible, but it's a good removal spell that cycles. That's the flexibility. A little more action here. Rooting Moloch, the 5 mana 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, exile a card with cycling in your graveyard, and you can play it till the end of your next turn, and it has cycling too. I like Rooting Moloch a lot. It's one of the cards that really gives the cycling deck some extra oomph, and is actually pretty good in a deck that's kind of light on cyclers because, first of all, this has cycling, so low cost to put in your deck. Second, it's great when you with Lava Serpent in particular. That's the curve. On turn 5, you play Moloch, exile the Serpent you cycled earlier. Turn 6, you play Serpent. You only need a couple other cards with cycling to really end up feeling good about this card
out of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Next, we have Savai Crystal, the 3-mana artifact that taps for red, white, or black and has cycling 2. Wait, are these actually uncommon? I thought the crystals were common. Huh.
They're uncommon.
Oh, wow. I always thought they were common for some reason. I guess it feels like you see a lot of them. But in any case, I'm not really interested in taking that. And then our last card, our rare, is Death's Oasis, the white, black, green enchantment, which says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you get milled for 2, and then you get to return a creature with a lesser converted mana cost than the creature that dies from your graveyard to your hand. And you can sack Death's Oasis to gain life equal to the greatest converted mana cost among creatures you control. This card, first of all, looks like it was made by Robo Rosewater.
It really does, and it just kind of stinks, right?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It has the problem where you can get milled out, which I know the sacrifices stop, but you just end up in a spot where if this isn't play and you're like tapped out and your opponent kills 2 of your things, you're just it. Because I don't know why, but the last couple of formats, there's been a lot of incidental you mill yourself out sort of situations, and this has happened to me in Ikoria. I've gotten decked numerous times, even when I had good win, like I thought enough win conditions. So man,
I did yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I flew way too close to the sun, right into it, in fact.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that happens. I would first pick Rooting Moloch out of this pack and feel okay about it. It's not a great first pick. It's a powerful card, but it's not. It's funny. It's just not as good as there's just a lot of powerful stuff going on in this format. So,
am I crazy to just take the Sandworm?
Yeah, I think Sandworm's a decent amount worse than the Moloch.
Okay. Like, I've been really happy with the Sandworm overall, and the Moloch has been medium for me. But I can definitely see the ceiling being higher on Moloch. Yeah. Okay. I think you're right. Okay. So there's our Crack-a-Pack. We'll do more of these as we work our way in, especially if we can get our hands on some actual packs, or I can take screenshots of the next few drafts I do and just save them for the next show. But it's just kind of weird right now because, normally we would have gone to a pre-release and had some packs in hand and been able to leverage that, but not the case here. So let's get into it, Luis. Format rundown for Ikoria. Boy, I mentioned it in our intro there, but holy crap, man. Like, normally the first week or two of a format, it's like there's a few things that pop out, like maybe one color that's outperforming, or you go, I kind of like this deck, or this has been working for me, or maybe there's an obvious color pair that kind of comes together and you start to get it. All right. Boy, this one just has like a loudspeaker, going like cycling, and like kind of just hitting you over the head with what is undoubtedly now the boogeyman in the format.
I mean, you want to hear something wild? I believe that I did. I told you and Chi on this. I forced cycling about 20 drafts in a row. Like it, and
unreal.
And it was just. Every time it was open. It was always open. It's less open now. I no longer. I think the correct strategy about a week ago was just to force cycling. Before I wrote that article in CFB and before everyone really started talking about it, it was just always open, and it was so much better than everything else. And my win rate was absurd with it because every time you would just get a great deck, and the deck is so consistent and it's so powerful, and it really doesn't get screwed or flooded as much as normal limited decks do. So. Plus, you just spread them for 15 at the end of the game. So I really see red white cycling as the sword of Damocles. The sword that's hanging by a thread. Where every time I draft a deck that isn't cycling, which I have started to do more of now because the deck's less open, there's just a part of me as a Magic player who likes pushing things to extremes. And so I remember telling myself I should really draft other decks, but it's like every time I draft a non-cycling deck, I feel like my deck could have been better if I was drafting cycling. So I just was like, how long is this going to last? Actually, I'm thankful that it's kind of over now where I don't feel like you should just force cycling. I think it's going to be, I'm going to first pick Zenith Flare no matter what, that's fine and all, but I'm not going to first pick a 1-mana cycler over a good blue rare anymore because I don't think that's correct at this point in the format. But every time I draft a non-cycling deck, I always feel like I've got that sword hanging over me where round 1, if my opponent goes Mountain, Cycle, Starting Development, Plains, Valiant Rescuer, turn 3 Snare Tactician, I'm like, I've lost this match. And even the games you think you've stabilized or are winning, you killed a couple threats. they just cycle a few more times end of turn. They point the Zenith Flare for 11 at you when you're at 17, and you're like, yeah, I'm probably going to lose.
Yeah, I've had that situation pop up a few times. You get used to it fairly quickly where like cycling decks holding 2 cards in their hand for quite a while. Like maybe they'll cycle one every once in a while. Like what is going on over there? And, you know, you get kind of tantalizingly close to beating them. They're down to 4 or 5 life, and you've got to usually have a better board state. And then a few patterns emerge, right? The first one is, well, they'll probably run out of cyclers, right? So they can't keep tapping down my things with a tapper guy or pinging me or whatever. They're not going to run out of cyclers. They never run out of cyclers. And then the other pattern that comes out is when your brain starts to construct ways for you to actually win the match is when Zenith Flare shows up and you go, oh, right. I was never even close to being in this game. Like I thought I was very close and maybe I needed to get a little luckier if I drew just, you know, I'm right on the verge of winning this game. And then they Zenith Flare you for 11. Right. And you're like, I had you at 4, but in your mind, you were at 16 at instant speed whenever you dang well felt like it. Right. And then a good percentage of the time they untap and flare you again. And then the game's just over. And you're like, right. Not only was this game, you know, not going to end well for me ever, it also wasn't close. And those are lessons that you learn when you play against a deck a few times. And also when you're playing with it, right? When you're going like, yeah, this looks really bad, but I have Zenith Flare in my hand. Like I'm not going to lose this game. Cycle. And then you get them.
You're also leaving out the games where someone plays a turn 1 Flourishing Fox and then the game ends 2 turns later because you're getting attacked by a 5/5.
Slayed by the thing. Yeah. So let's so the two things so we should definitely go deeper on the red white cycling deck.
Yeah, we're gonna do that later in the episode for sure.
Yeah, but the one I wanted to talk about at the front here is, look, we've talked about it a bunch of times on the show. It's one of the things that draws me to Limited. It's self-correcting, right? The idea that if a deck is too good, enough people will fight over it so that you're incentivized to actually not draft it unless, you know, your seat is particularly amenable to it. I feel confident that the cycling deck can support 2 players easily. Can it support a third? Could there be 4, let's say red, white, blue cycling players at the table? Like this deck has been tough to knock off. Like you said, the trend is a little away from it, but it wasn't like week 1, it was everywhere. And then week 2, everybody's fighting. It's still here.
Yeah. So there's one more factor that comes in, which is that the cycling deck has kind of inadvertently taught people how good cycling 1 is just in general. The black decks should be taking memory leak like 3rd pick, because a powerful effect that's situational with cycling 1 is unbelievable. The difference between cycling 1 and cycling 2 is not as little as it looks. People probably look at it and say like, well, this costs 2, this costs 1. 1 is dramatically less than half as much as 2 in terms of how it plays out, because the turns where you have 1 mana left over are very, very common. The turns where you have 2 are a lot less common. So the blue deck should be taking Frostveil Ambush. You know, the red deck should be taking Go for Blood, even if they're not a cycling deck per se. So what really eats it in on the cycling deck's equity is not, yeah, you don't get 7th pick Zenith Flares anymore. Great. You know, you're not wheeling Snare Tacticians. It's less that, even though those things aren't happen, and more that you're just not going to end up with 12 1-mana cyclers anymore because other people at the table are taking Startling Development for their blue-green mutate deck because it's a cheap card to cycle. And then sometimes you go Startling Development as a +2/+2. And that's just like a pretty nice card. So sure, Footfall Crater is not a card I would expect to play outside of a cycling payoff deck very often because it's just you're not really going to cast that card. But a lot of the castable 1-mana cyclers should just not be going so late. You know, Draenith Healer is just fantastic in a black-white humans deck. So the cycling deck is self-correcting, like you said, and it's not only that, yeah, maybe there's 2 people drafting cycling, 3 people drafting cycling. There's also people drafting cyclers, and that cuts the legs out from under that deck. I had a red-white cycling deck that had like 6 1-mana cyclers and a lot of 2-mana cyclers, and I did not do well with it. I'm like, wow, doubling the cost on my cycling cards, what that sure hurt me, you know? So I am still in the camp of like, hey, look, if I open a Zenith Flare, if I open a Flourishing Fox, or if I get a third pick Valiant Rescue or something like that, I'm pretty likely to take them because these cards all have such high ceilings and pretty high floors. Zenith Flare has the lowest floor of these cards, but like Valiant Rescue is great in any white deck, for example. So I'm still going to take the cycling payoffs and try to see if the deck's open, but I'm no longer in the spot where I'm like, oh, there's a 1-mana cycler. I guess I'll take that over this like cool mutate card. Which I actually was. I was at the point where I'm first picking Frostbale Ambush over like Chittering Harvester because at this point I'm looking to just get my cycling going. I'm not really interested in non-cycling decks. I don't think that's correct anymore, and that's good because that's not the sign of a healthy format. I do think the cycling deck is too good. Like the format would be better if Zenith Flare did not exist or couldn't hit players. Either of those would help quite a bit. The format would be better, I think, if Snare Tactician was an uncommon. But this is the format we've got, and let's give an overview of what else is going on here, because it's not the only thing going on, but it's the loudest, and you need to pay attention to it because you need to be prepared to draft it and also know kind of how you can fight against it, and also be taking 1-mana cyclers higher even for your non-cycling decks. Yeah,
because I do want to know what the balancing act looks like here, because of the fact that these 1-mana cyclers, I think there's 10 in the set that cycle for 1 generic mana. And that means, and those of course are across multiple colors. In fact, I think they're across all the colors outside of maybe green. No, yeah, outside of green. I wonder if those are the things that you need to be the glue for your cycling deck, so that anytime you see a payoff, any of the payoffs that are reasonable, you take it. And then every other pick is just looking for cycling 1. I mean, there's a lot of cycling 1 that people are just snatching up and they don't have to read the text on the card at all. And that makes me a little worried because, I mean, there's 2 things that I think of. One is that make it too easy to get the deck consistently, because there's going to be some number of Trans Stingers opened, right? There's going to be some number of these payoffs that are just going to be opened, and you can just prioritize them. And then 2, was it a mistake or was it risky for Wizards to print cycling 1 on this many cards, where perhaps it could have been like, think of Boon of the Wishgiver, right? The draw 4. What if it was cycling for blue, right? Would that have changed everything if each of these cards, cycled for, instead of 1 generic mana, 1 mana of whatever color they are? Are they playing with fire with this? I mean, it just makes these things so fungible. That's just like, everybody's playing everything.
The danger of cycling is it makes you not care about the card it's on if you're looking, especially if they're paying you for the intrinsic act of cycling. I think the format would be better if Memory Leak cost a black to cycle and Boon cost a blue to cycle, for sure. That I think would help. I mean, look at it this way. There's a Jeskai cycling deck in Standard that just plays every 1-mana cycler and tries to Zenith Flare the opponent out. Like that's an actual viable Standard strategy.
Yeah, that says a lot, doesn't it? Okay.
There's actually a pauper combo deck that Brian DeMars just posted about on CFP yesterday that I built and is awesome. It's all 1-mana cycling creatures plus this old spell from Ice Age, which for 1 black mana, Songs of the Damned, that gives you a black mana for each creature in your graveyard. And then you just cycle, cast this, add 10 mana, cast Reaping the Graves. It's 2 and a black, get a creature back with Storm. Get them all back, cycle, and it's pretty wild. Cycling That's 1 sweet. Is just wow. Cycling 1 is just it's pauper. Cycling 1 is a really powerful ability, and it is playing with fire, and we're getting a little burned, I think, right now.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll go deeper into the actual archetype as well, but the development of this challenging the self-correcting nature of draft is very interesting to me, and I want to see if the red-white/blue cycling deck is going to be the type of thing that kind of mars the format for the duration, or if the whole self-correcting thing actually comes in and does it. Now, what other big hitters, though? Because I'll tell you, red-white cycling was the loudest voice in the room of the things that were apparent at first, but it was not the only voice in the room. What about companions?
Companions really big too. And so there's 10 companions. They're rare. They're not mythic rare. So they show up relatively often, and they have a huge impact where, first of all, they make it so you build your deck very differently when you have one of these companions. And then it also makes it so when you play against a companion, you have a pretty different experience than normal limited. Like when you play against an Umori deck, it's like, first of all, their deck's all creatures. So that's a little kind of weird to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then second of all, they've got this 4-mana 4/5 that makes their whole deck cheaper that's going to come out on turn 3 or 4 every single game. It's just really hard for that not to happen, whether it's turn 3 thanks to Humble Naturalist, or turn 4 thanks to like a Farfinder, or just playing 4 lands. Mm-hmm. And so this ends up warping the format quite a bit, where it's not anything you can really do about it, especially since you're going to play against quite a few companions, right? And you're going to play against more than you'll actually have, I would say. You end up in a spot where they have a big impact. You have to know how to draft with them. Playing against them is not really much you can do, except like, if they have a Yorion and you have counter spells in your deck, you can kind of try to predict which turn they'll play it, leave up a counter spell. It's a little easier to play with counter spells when they're 5-drops or face up, right? But mm-hmm. But we're going to rank the companions a little later as well. And yeah, let me tell you, they're all good, and some are, and like 7 of the 10 I think are just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, these have generated a ton of discussion for Constructed and sort of broader implications for Magic. But man, they have a major impact in Limited as well.
And I've talked about this before, where I think the impact that cards have in Constructed do shape the narrative in Limited a little bit too. And mm-hmm. Look, if you only play Limited, if you never care a single bit about Constructed, you're impacted less by this. But most Magic players dabble in multiple formats, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that like Lurrus is just insane in Constructed, that Obosh is making big waves, that Gyruda is there, Ioria, and you're seeing it all over the place, impacts how you feel about it when you play with and against it in Limited a little too. So there's definitely a bit of a fatigue there. And companions are a big part of the format. This is one of the things, like you said, when we look back at Ikoria in a couple of years, it'll be like, oh yeah, that's the red-white cycling deck and the companions. I think those are going to be the two.
Those are headliners for sure. I'm worried about the companions for Limited. There's 2 kind of prongs to my worry. First one is just power level, right? It's been super interesting to see people's reaction to should I build around my companion or not, right? This is a thing that's popped up a lot. And it's so hard to convey until you actually play it, how much better it is to have that extra card in your hand that's a powerful, basically all of them are powerful plays ranging in power. But, Yorion, let's use that as the example, right? 4/5 flyer with upside. But just having a pretty easy to cast 4/5 flyer in your opening hand, in your virtual opening hand every single game in a game of Limited it's devastating. I mean, it is so good to have that and just every game play that on turn 5 or 6 or whatever. And it's hard to convince people you should go this far out of your way for this extra ability. So that's one, is just raw power. The thing I'm actually more concerned about, though, because the raw power in how it feels in the game isn't devastating. When somebody plays a mythic rare against you that is like one of those kind of unbeatable bombs that we're all familiar with, it's deflating. You're just like, I can't beat that card, right? Like there was nothing that I could have done during the course of this game to give me a chance to beat that card. The companions don't actually play out that way. They're more like attrition based, most of them, where you're getting more resources at your disposal than they are, and they're good resources too, and that will lead to more wins. But when somebody plays Yorion on turn 5, you're like, oh, that's pretty good, right? But it feels like they played a rare, like a good card that could get killed, might get them a card of value out of it or whatever. It's the consistency that's the hard part. It's the fact that they just always have it and that they never miss that beat and that they have that extra card in their hand that they didn't play in that spot. And this is the thing that worries me. The other prong of my worry is not just power level, because again, that isn't as devastating up front. It's the consistency. I'm worried that you're going to be playing in a big Limited tournament down the stretch here in a little while, whether it's online or if we get back to real life tournaments, and you're going to go to the top tables near the end of the day at those tournaments, and you're going to see companions all over the place. That the people with the Yorion builds, and especially the less restrictive ones, I don't know how this translates to sealed yet. It might be really tough to actually companion your companion in sealed, so I don't know about that part. But at least in the booster draft tables, I would be really worried if there was this strict delineation between person was able to companion and is crushing, and then everybody else kind of gets left behind. I could just see them having a 12% higher win percentage or 8% or something just insane off of being able to make that one card work if the restriction isn't as strong as we hope it would be.
Yeah, and I think that we're gonna get the companion experience quite a bit. And look, I will say though, it is fun to play with them. I actually do think that not even just from a straight power level perspective, though obviously power level is a big part of evaluating things, but I think that it is cool having this deck building exercise of like, hey, can I make a deck that only has 2 drops, for Luris? Mm-hmm. And or playing Obosh and like, wow, the spring draw trap now deals 6. That little synergy was like pretty sweet. Of course, mm-hmm. Obosh actually is more the thing you described, where Obosh is not only a good value card, but also just what feels like a bomb rare because it makes all your creatures deal double damage. So right. That actually hits both notes. But it's important, regardless of the power level. Nothing's going to happen. Cards don't really get banned and limited. I don't think these will either. It is good to know which companions are worth going for and kind of how. So we'll give a rundown of that, and then the other strategies going on in the format that are quite powerful. Are mutate decks, which tend to be blue-green or green-black and often splash, thanks to Farfinder, Evolving Wilds, Duels, Humble Naturalist. All that stuff can help splash cool mutate triggers. Black-white humans and red-black sacrifice also have a lot of similarities where they've got some little synergies and sacrifice things. Like Whisper Squad does well in both those decks. The humans deck can be more aggressive. Sometimes it even has a cycling sub theme where you're just playing Snare Tacticians alongside your cycling cards. And then red black uses threaten plus just the various sacrifice effects. Weaponize the Monsters I found to be actually a really good card. The 1-mana enchantment that you can pay 2 to shock and sack a creature to shock anyone.
Start throwing or anything. Your creatures around, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just play this card and all of a sudden you're just like, wow, they have 10 damage on the board. And there's a lot of little crappy creatures that work out fairly well for this too. So I like those decks. And then green black also has the reanimator aspect to things, where you've got these huge cyclers, the Titanoth Rex and Void Beckoner, along with Unbreakable Bond and Back for More. And that's like a pretty cool little way to go about things as well.
Yeah, and don't forget our Sandworm friend too. That's
At common Sandworm and Lava Serpent do the trick too. They're not the hugest payoffs, but they're definitely good. I also like the ultimatums. That's another thing that's going on is these ultimatums, these 7-mana cards that are like pretty difficult to cast but have a really huge payoff. These actually they're all castable and they have varying power level, but they're all pretty high power level. I love that they kind of went overboard on the fixing. Like there is no shortage.
Way overboard. Yeah, it's everywhere and it's great.
Yeah, there's no shortage of mana fixing, and I've managed to play, like when you want to play an ultimatum, it seems like you usually get to do so. Yep. And I've even played decks that had multiple ultimatums, though I definitely wouldn't recommend doing lots of
multiple different ultimatums.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. So yeah, the ultimatums have actually been one of my favorite surprises, because when you see those in a normal limited set, they look really cool and it's almost never correct to play them. Cards with mana cost of like CC, BBB, DD, whatever, like 7 mana symbols, colored mana symbols is really tough. And this format, I watched a clip. I'm going to use it on Outside Notes. Oh, by the way, I should mention that. That's a video series I'm doing for Wizards that is actually about Ikoria Limited. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But yeah, it's called Outside Notes. Just a fun kind of shorter video clip thing I'm doing for them. But anyway, I like to put some highlight stuff for Limited to kind of show like the cool stuff that can happen. And I was watching a guy, somebody sent me the link, and he's streaming and he's just crushing his opponent. And, he's saying like, he's kind of speculating like, well, I guess if my opponent had Eerie Ultimatum, which I think is the one I'm thinking of, that's the Obzon one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings all your stuff back, one of each unique card name, whatever, from the graveyard back to the battlefield. And his opponent starts tapping a bunch of mana and then boom, puts on like 9 creatures on the battlefield. But our hero has the the Mardu Ultimatum, which I can't remember the name.
Ruinous Ultimatum, yeah.
Ruinous Ultimatum, but needs a swamp or whatever and ends up drawing it and blowing up all the stuff. So it's like both players play 2 ultimatums back to back. Pretty funny. But that is actually not, I mean, that particular sequence is really rare and cool. But somebody casting an ultimatum I've already cast 3 or 4 of them in not that many drafts. And that's with drafting cycling a decent amount of the time where I'm not interested in ultimatum. So that to me really shows that they've gone super hard on the fixing, because normally you just don't get to cast cards like that.
Yeah. So to kind of bring it all together before we dive in on the specific topics, the overview of the format, I see red-white cycling taking up this like big space right at the top, where a good red-white cycling deck is just the best deck. And, that's just how this format is constructed. And then you have companions at rare, so they don't show up nearly as often, of course, but often enough that they end up being a pretty memorable and important feature of the format as well. And then you have these good decks like mutate decks, sacrifice decks, humans decks, and then 5-color ultimatum piles or 3-color ultimatum piles. Blue-red spells is another one. You've got a lot of decks that kind of do various things that are solid decks to draft, and it's good to know how to draft them, because a lot of the time this is where you're going to end up. And if you're lucky, every now and then you'll get to ultimatum, or you get to red-white cycling your opponent out, but that's not going to happen every time. So much to my chagrin, had to learn other decks as well. I
was going to say it's not going to happen every time unless you're you, because you've done it like every time. But
so let's do a deep dive on red-white cycling, because we talked about it a lot. And I think it's something that it's worth really understanding how this works. So unsurprisingly, the goals just have a ton of 1-mana cyclers and cycling payoffs, and then you're going to fill out the rest of the deck with 2-mana cyclers and kind of good non-cycling payoff cards, which you're going to have just a couple of those cards in your deck. Most of the cards in your deck are either going to have cycling or pay you off for cycling. So it's a pretty high bar. The deck also usually plays like 13 to 15 lands.
Which is crazy, right? When you just thinking that we'd be playing 13 or 14 land decks and not even thinking twice about it, and in fact, trying to convince ourselves if we could go a little lower. Like, I keep finding myself in that position. I don't think it's viable, but I keep going like, can I get away with 12? Can I do 13 for this build? And it's like, because you do, inherently switch the balance of lands to spells in your deck when you pack it with a bunch of cyclers.
Yeah, and the part that is really funny, and why I think that the biggest thing that'll lead to this deck kind of settling down and being a little bit more of a normal power level, is that if you don't have enough 1-mana cyclers, you have to play more lands, and that's really bad for the deck, which only has a couple action cards in it. So
that's right.
It can actually be pretty brutally punishing if you have to play 15 lands instead of 13, because you only have 6 1-mana cyclers and you need like 10 or 11 to play 13 lands. Yeah,
I did want to hone in on one point before you get to the power rankings that you mentioned briefly, but I think it's worth reiterating, is the bar for including cards that are not cycling payoffs or do not cycle, right, is very high, higher than you'd normally think.
I mean, the bar is close to Fire Prophecy.
Right. That's exactly the card I was thinking of, right? Is a premium removal spell is kind of the bar. Normally, we have to make compromises in limited, right? Where you're like, well, you're going to play this powerful 5-drop creature that you got that does a thing. You might be able to, you might not. Like, you really do need critical massive cycling cards, and there isn't an upper limit. I mean, realistically, like, you would play as many 1-mana cyclers as you could possibly fit in the deck outside of the payoffs. This is a true synergy all-in deck, and you should approach it that way when you draft it. Okay, now tell us about the payoffs.
So the number one payoff is Zenith Flare. And, if you told me a week ago that I was playing in a draft pro tour, I would take Zenith Flare over every other card. I would literally not take Zenith Flare. I would take Zenith Flare over all the best companions. I would just do all that, because I think Zenith Flare is just unbelievably broken in the cycling deck. It's the card that makes it almost impossible for your opponent to win, because it's a huge payoff, and the cycling deck by nature just sees so many cards. Like, yes. That's what the deck does. Right. Second, I have Flourishing Fox.
One more thing about Zenith Flare. You get them. the other decks have no interest in Zenith Flare. It doesn't even do anything in most decks. Like, so if there's one open at the table and you're the red-white cycling player, you will see it. So that's another thing that it's not being fought over by anybody else. It's a gold card that is specific to one archetype. So you get all of them if you're that player. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that has made me the least unhappy in Ikoria draft, to be honest, is when I'm not drafting cycling and I see a 5th pick Zenith Flare at pack 2.
I saw one with 4 cards left in the pack.
And you're just like, no.
And this was the draft where I was like, I'm not cycling this time. I'm not going to do it. You know, like I'm going to draft something else. And I did. I drafted this like Otter deck or whatever. 4 cards left in the pack Zenith Flare. And I'm just like, I can't. But I did. And I lost, of course. Like I could have won easily if I just, anyway, go on.
Yeah. So Zenith Flare number 1, Flourishing Fox number 2. This is a 1-mana 1/1 with cycling 1 that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you cycle. The games where you open with this card are trivially easy, and if they kill it, you just get to play a normal game, and if they don't kill it, you win the game. Yep. Also, later in the game, it has cycling 1, so it's never dead. So
which is just absurd, by the way.
Yeah, like, it makes come on. Then Valiant Rescuer, the 2-mana 3/1 that makes a 1/1 the first time you cycle each turn. This card is really, really strong. It's just a really, really strong payoff that also has cycling 2 and gives you this whole army. So one of the cool things about it is it's the card that really makes you end up using those charges. The 5-mana give all your creatures +2/+1. Like. You end up at a point in the game where you're just not cycling your charges because you know that you're gonna make 6 or 7 tokens and just kill them. Mm-hmm. Number 4, Snare Tactician. I've actually moved this one up quite a bit from my initial rankings. Mm-hmm. It kind of reads to me in a good cycling deck. 3-mana 2/3. Your opponent's creatures can't attack or block.
Yes,
like that's how it feels playing against it, doesn't it? It's so demoralizing. Your opponent says go, right, and they have like a Snare Tactician in play, and you're like, all right, I've got my 4-drop and my 5-drop. Am I going to get to attack? And it's like, no, I'm not. They are going to cycle and tap both my creatures.
Yes, perpetually.
Barely below Snare Tactician is Reptilian Reflection, the 2 and a red enchantment that becomes a 5/4 trample haste when you cycle. This card, so the ideal curve, right, is you play a Prickly Marmoset on 3, turn 4 you play Reflection, cycle a 1-drop, and just crack for 9. It's also the card that pays you off among the most for having the 1-mana cyclers because of that haste, though all these cards obviously pay you off for having 1-mana cyclers.
Yeah.
It's also the kind of card which it's so messed up where you have this card out, and let's say you don't attack with it. Is your opponent going to attack with a 3/3? What if you're just slow rolling a cycling card?
Seriously.
Like, doesn't it seem just absurd?
It does. And another card that you're talking about in a minute has that same effect on the game too.
Yes. The next one, of course, Prickly Marmoset, the 3-mana 2/3 first strike.
That's the one.
It gets +2/+0 whenever you cycle. It's ridiculous. It's a 3-drop. Your opponent plays their like 5/5, and you're like, all right, attack with my 3-drop, and they're like, well, I can't block here, obviously. Also, one of the mini combos with the Marmoset is Raking Claws. The 2-mana give a creature double strike with cycling 2. What'll happen sometimes in the like mid to late games, you attack with the Marmoset and they take it. They're at 16, and you go cycle, Raking Claws take 16.
Yes, and you die. Low key, and it goes the other way too, right? Like you play a Prickly Marmoset and pass the turn. If you have 3 mana up, they can't ever attack you with anything. It just completely brick walls all blocks and attacks from your opponent, and it's a random common 3-drop. Like low key, Prickly Marmoset is like number 1 on the power rankings list somehow. Based on the amount of board states it's affected because it's a common. But like the card, it overperforms by so much more than any of this is a common trope, right? Like you'll see this type of card that says, I get a bit bigger when you do the thing that this set does. But it was not apparent, like when we were reading the set review, that you could trivially trigger this 3 times in a turn, right? 4 times in a, like there are no blocks outside of chump blocks for a Prickly Marmoset, and there are no attacks into it if your opponent has 3 or 4 mana available and any number of cards in hand. It's so funny. And they could even have 1 card in hand and it can end up being a 6/6 because they cycle into cyclers. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, there's a concept that I've coined to describe this. It's a threat of activation.
I don't know. Do you want to unveil your new concept here?
Yep. And it's when you attack with your 2/3 marmoset and they've got a 6/6 and they can't block, and then you don't have to cycle. You can just play something else that turn because of the threat of activation.
Because of the threat. I like the naming. Very punchy. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, marmoset's awesome though. Seriously.
And then below all of those is actually Savai Thundermane, which is the red-white for a 3/2. And then every time you cycle, you can pay 2 to deal 2 to any creature and gain 2. And it's funny because this card looks absurd, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is. And it's still the worst of the payoffs, all of which are very good. This is partly why the cycling deck has popped off so much. They put an obscene amount of really, really high-quality payoffs. Like, I remember when I was first making the list, I'm like, really? They made Zenith Flare and Fox and Rescuer and Reflection all at uncommon, and then Snare Tactician, Marmoset at common. Oh, and then Savai Thunder made it uncommon. Like, why does the cycling deck get so many payoffs, and why are they all 10 out of 10s?
Yeah, so, and perhaps the one besides Marmoset that's responsible for the most damage isn't even on this list. Like Drannith Stinger does tons of damage over the course of the game too, yet somehow there's 7 cards that you'd rather have above it at the minimum. It's unreal.
Yeah, and Drannith Stinger is also a fantastic card. Of course, I have that grouped with the 1-mana cyclers, but it's clearly the best of those, and it kind of counts as a payoff. So those are the payoffs you want, and then the overall pick order for the red-white cycling deck, and pick orders, again, as always, they evolve during the draft, but overall is like payoffs, like these payoffs, plus Drannith Stinger. I actually have that elevated above the rest of the 1-mana cyclers. Followed by like Fire Prophecy and Pacifism, like the 2-mana top tier removals. I actually especially like Prophecy because it helps you put lands on the bottom, because this deck does tend to accumulate lands once it's cycling a ton. Followed by 1-mana cyclers, and this is the category that moves up the most if you don't have them. The deck doesn't work without 1-mana cyclers. So let's say you're lucky enough to open a Zenith Flare and you pick up like a Valiant Rescuer. At that point, if you're running low on cyclers, if you're not getting them late, I would just start taking them even over cards like Fire Prophecy and Pacifism. You need your deck to work. And a cycling deck that's a little light on payoffs but has all the cyclers is going to generally outperform the deck that has more payoffs but all 2-mana cyclers and not enough 1-mana cyclers.
Right.
And then you want to take, so after the 1-mana cyclers, you take the good non-cyclers like Cathartic Reunion. Blitz of the Thunder Raptor ends up working out pretty nicely because you just cycle all these spells into your graveyard. And cards like that, and then the 2-mana cyclers, which can also move up if you're still short, because the 2-mana cycler is still playable. The best of the 2-mana cyclers, like Lava Serpent, followed by Shredded Sails, and then Raking Claws. Basically, all the castable ones are higher, and the same is true for the 1-mana ones. Like, yes, you should take Go for Blood over any of the off-color 1-mana cyclers, even if you don't cast it all the time.
Okay, and what does a typical good build of this deck actually look like?
If you're lucky, like 4 to 6 payoffs, and that counts the common ones too. So, I mean, I've definitely had decks that had 8 payoffs, and those decks were insane. But even if you have like, let's say you had 2 Snare Tacticians, 2 Prickly Marmosets, 1 Fox, and 1 Valiant Rescuer, I would say that you could run a good cycling deck. Again, Zenith Flare is the GOAT. The Zenith Flare decks just can't really lose a long game, which is why they're so good. You want as many Drannith Stingers and Drannith Healers as possible, because these are the cards that let you play a good 2-drop and a really good in the case of Stinger, but also cycle later. And the 2-drop part's actually kind of important because what you can run into, I've had like a 3 or 4 Snare Tactician deck that doesn't have enough other creatures, and those decks tend to be a little bit slow at actually getting the damage through.
Right.
So when you're going to play a turn 3 and turn 4 Snare Tactician, a 2-drop is worth like 8 damage. So it's really nice to have those. Something like 2 to 4 Fire Prophecy / Pacifisms, usually end up with around 2 of these. Rumbling Rockslide is much worse because 4 lands is so much. 0 to 4 2-mana cyclers, and this is the ambitious. This is the good version of the deck. Realistically, you're going to probably have like 6 2-mana cyclers. You're not usually going to be able to get down to this few. And then 6 to 12 1-mana cyclers, though there's no upper limit really. Like, I've never run into a deck that can legitimately justify cutting a 1-mana cycler.
Right.
And if you have less than 6, you're really going to have trouble. And then
and then don't forget, it doesn't matter if you can cast a spell or not.
No,
which is a weird thing for your brain to say, is like, I'm going to play this black card in my green in my white red deck, but you just do it. Even if you only ever cycle it, it's totally fine. In fact, desirable to have it in your deck.
Yeah. So, and then 13 to 15 lands. I've never gone lower. I've sighted down to 12 on the draw when I knew my opponent was going to be on the play. But that's when I had something like, I think 12 or 13 1-mana cyclers. I would probably aim to usually play at 13 to 14 lands. And if you're playing 15 or 16, you're in a bit of trouble usually.
Yeah.
So,
and keep that in mind, by the way. Let's say you're on average playing 14 lands out of this. You do need a few extra playables rather than the 23 that you'll normally plan on when you're drafting. You're going to need to make sure that, again, you have a few more 1-mana cyclers or whatever to fill that slot.
Yeah. So at the end of it, this is the deck. This is what it looks like. And if you play with it, you generally don't want to cycle on turn one if you have let's say a hand of 3 lands, Marmoset, Snare Tactician, 2 1-mana cyclers. Because you have your 3rd land already, I would generally not cycle on turn one unless I had a bunch of 2-drops. Of course, 1 fewer land, I'm definitely cycling, but in general, I think you do want to conserve the 1-mana cyclers once you have your curve lined up. If you're missing lands or missing drops, then sure, you gotta wait. But
yeah, but each cycle is a resource, right? It's not just the card you get back, but it's a trigger for the cards you get down. So in your ideal scenario, you can play lands to establish a board presence of payoffs, whichever ones you happen to have drawn, Marmosets or Stingers or whatever, and then you start churning through your library to load up on those triggers. And that's your ideal setup. But you are rarely punished for doing it the other way, because if you do have to start cycling to hit your land drops or whatever, then that's where cards like Zenith Flare come in and kind of save you.
Yeah. So playing against the deck, basically, if you ever have the option to kill their stuff, you should kill it instead of trying to develop your board, because Snare Tactician kind of renders your creatures irrelevant. Zenith Flare really punishes you for taking an extra hit off that Marmoset. So that's the best advice I can give you. And then, if you have counters are good against Zenith Flare, but they're pretty awkward in the early game. So it's not even like that's a great solution either.
Yeah, the best strategies I've seen has been to develop an early board presence that's, can apply some amount of pressure, and then have the first removal spell or 2 for their first, Marmoset or their first Snare Tactician or something, because these cycling decks are threat light. They have so many spots taken up by cycling cards and stuff that they don't flood the board, generally speaking, with a bunch of threats. And if you have removal for them, you can at least slow down that process. Then your attention focuses as you are able to continue applying damage to Zenith Flare. So that means you need a counterspell or a way to get it out of their hand. And then you can actually set yourself up to get wins against the deck. But this is one of the best limited archetypes I've ever seen. There are no weaknesses to this deck. None. It is consistent. It is very powerful. It has an unbelievably good early game with these cheap payoffs that we talked about in combination with cyclers. And even though you get to run way fewer lands than you normally would in a limited deck, which is a benefit, you also have things to do with your mana late game that fit perfectly into your early game and mid game strategy. This is legitimately one of the scariest and best archetypes I've seen printed in a normal limited set ever. There are no weaknesses to the deck. So keep that in mind when you're playing against it. If you lose to it and you're getting frustrated, this deck's extremely good. And the way that this deck will be mitigated out of that position is if enough people go after it every draft. Basically, 3 people trying to split up the cards could bring it down to a more reasonable level. I don't believe that 2 does it. I think that if exactly 2 people sit down and say, I'm drafting red, white, another one, a little further down the table says I am as well, and nobody else competes for that specific archetype, that you're going to have 2 very good cycling decks at the table. And that's scary stuff. But, people will do what the incentives tell them to do.
We could all do our part, which is snag those 1-mana cyclers. First of all, because you should be playing more of them in your deck. They're just a powerful card / effect. And second, that's going to mitigate the strength. If everyone does a good job of this, we'll see less of these busted red-white cycling decks.
Can we advocate for hate drafting one card and one card only? Just take the Zenith Flare. Don't let them have it.
No. You still shouldn't hate draft, but you should be taking the 1-mana cyclers more aggressively because they're just good in your deck. So
okay, now what about the companions? This was the other big headliner that we talked about earlier coming out of the set. But what about actually playing them and how often we should build around them and all that?
All right, let's do a dive into companions because I see there being 2 tiers of companions. Tier 1 is the build around if at all possible companions. These are the ones where when people ask, "Hey, should I be playing this companion in my deck?" I basically always say yes. Mm-hmm. It's really hard for me to imagine saying no. And then there's Tier 2, which are good but not mandatory, which are also very strong. So to give you, just so you know, the baseline companion is like an A card in limited. The worst companions are like still A's. The best are just A pluses.
Yeah, B plus to A range is where I would have most of these companions.
Yeah, I have them at A to A plus range, but
I don't. I really don't. I mean, like, I don't think Umori's an A. Like, Umori's a good card.
I think Umori is an A. I think Umori is just obscene.
No, like, that's ridiculous. Come on. If you couldn't companion it, you would just be like, it's a 4/5 with some upside. Like, that is not a great card.
But it's good upside in the decks that companion it. You play Umori, and if they don't kill it, you just play like 7 mana worth of cards on the next turn.
But you were saying outside of companion. I'm saying.
Oh no, I just mean as a. Sorry, yes. What I mean is, as a card, if I look at this card, my limited grade for all these cards is A. Some of them get A pluses.
Because you can companion them
because of the baked-in companion part.
I see.
Outside of companion, yes, I agree. Outside of companion, if you just have a deck and let's say you pack 3, you're just not able to companion it, which happens, and but you put Umori in your deck, it's like a B plus. So that part I agree with.
Okay. So which ones fall into the build around if at all possible category for you?
So first of all, I think like this is top down. So I think the best companion is Obosh. I mean, it's close. It's kind of irrelevant who's better, Obosh, Garuda, Giganta, or Umori is not really a decision you're going to be faced very often. I think overall the best is Obosh because this is the 5-mana, 3/5 Rakdos mana. You can only play it if every card in your deck has an odd casting cost, excluding lands, of course. It's a 3/5 that says all your cards with odd costs deal double damage. So it's by itself essentially a 5-mana 6/5, and then if you've companioned it, it makes it so all your creatures and it's actually all your cards. So things like Springjaw Trap deal double damage.
It says a source you control. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not even just permanent. Sorry, just sources. No, I don't know. All the damage dealing cards except Flame Spell, I guess, are even, which is why I didn't know. But so I think Obosh is the overall best. It's just what you're trying to do with Obosh is just draft tons of 1s and 3s. Serrated Scorpion's actually really good because when it dies, it deals 4 to your opponent.
That gets us into the range where I'm liking it. Yeah.
Yeah. Whisper Squad is also pretty strong because you have nothing to do on turn 2 anyway. And if you get 3 Whisper Squads into play, then play Obosh, it's just like there's a bunch of 2/1s coming at you. Mm-hmm. Excavation Mole is also quite strong because it's effectively a 6/3 trampler. Though trample and double damage is actually a little bit weird.
What does it do?
So let's say if they block with a 3/3, you're not dealing 3 to them. You're assigning you're assigning all that damage, and then that damage is doubled.
That's right. Yeah. So it's not actually double strike. Keep that in mind. Yeah.
Right. The other thing that's really critical with Obosh is combat tricks are really strong. So sudden spinnerets and fully grown are really good. These are odd casting cost things, and when your creatures are all dealing double damage, combat tricks are really, really good. I had an Obosh deck where I just used black green, had a bunch of moles, had a bunch of combat tricks, and I routinely would play like Obosh on 5, Kraken, get some good attacks, and next turn if they didn't kill Obosh, if they just played another creature, I'd attack with everything and just play 2 tricks on whatever went unblocked or was blocked by a small creature and just kill them from like 16. It's really, really good.
It's like you're playing the Infect deck.
So it's funny, Springjaw Trap, I wonder if it was seeded in there intentionally. It's good with actually like 3 of the companions actually make that card better.
Oh, weird. Yeah.
Obosh, Luris, and Zerta all actually improve that card quite a bit.
That's really funny.
So after Obosh is actually Gyruda, the 6 mana 6/6 Dimir companion that you have to play all evens, and then it mills each player for 4, and you put an even cost creature into play from those 8 cards. Gyruda is again a hugely powerful card, and I actually kind of like the expensive companions a little bit more. And part of the reason is the power level is relative to the casting cost,
right?
And knowing that you've got a sick 5 or 6 drop can really inform your deck building to the point where you can just play extra lands and you've got this hugely powerful card every single game. Whereas the 3 drops are still very good, but they have a less big impact on the game. So you can't build your deck around them to the same degree. With Gyruda, you obviously want powerful creatures to go along with it. It's, Humble Naturalist. Humble Naturalist is quietly like almost all the companions' best friend because it's ramp that accelerates creatures, and it doesn't work with Obosh, of course, but it slots nicely into most of the companions. And I would want to draft a more controlling deck with Gyruda because you can actually play a bunch of different kinds of removal spells, whereas Obosh wants you to be aggressive because you want to have a board, play this, a swing with your board, next turn try to kill them. Gyruda is like, if you can keep the board clear, this is a one army in a can. You play this, you're almost always going to get something else with it. The other thing about companions, by the way, is they're easily splashable because of the hybrid mana. So they're really not taxing you when it comes to any of this.
No, they're not, and that does. There's a few of them. Yorion comes to mind that lend themselves to sometimes playing 3-color decks and stuff, and we'll talk about that guy in a little bit. But the fact that you can fit these into different color combos really actually becomes relevant and makes you decide what do you want to do with your Obosh, right? Do you actually want it to be a black-red deck? Because you don't have to. You could just have it be green-red or whatever, or green-black, and pick your poison. What's next on the list?
Is Jegantha, the Wellspring. This is a 4 and a red-green hybrid mana for a 5/5 that taps for one of each color, but you can't pay colorless costs with those colors. And its companion is you can't have any card that has more than one of the same mana symbol. So you can have multicolor cards where you can have a card that costs green, black 4, like Back for More. But you can't have a card that costs green 5. You can't have Sandworm. You can't even have the hybrid cards that cost. So if you had a Jegantha deck, you couldn't play Umori because it's 2 of the same hybrid mana symbol. So it's any mana symbol that's the same. For constructed, funnily enough, you can't play Chalice of the Void because it costs XX, and those are the same.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that.
But Jegantha is less powerful than basically all the other companions in terms of what the card does. But it's got the lightest requirement. I have rarely found that you need to cut more than a couple cards to play Jegantha, and it's usually worth it. It's almost always worth it. A 5-mana 5/5 that taps for mana, again, free in your opening hand. Also with a single hybrid mana cost, it's really easy to splash Jegantha. Like I remember losing to this really good black-white control deck that was splashing Jegantha and a couple red cards. And just having this big 5/5 every time. That also, the fact that it taps to pay a couple mana towards your next turn means frequently you play it on 5, and on turn 6 you can play two good spells.
Dump your hand, yeah.
Next is Umori, the 2 green-black hybrid mana, the Golgari one. It's a 4/5 for 4. The companion requirement is all your non-lands have to share a type, which basically for limited means you have to play all creatures. I don't really think there's a realistic all instance way to get things done. But Umori is really good. And what I've actually managed to draft with Umori 3 different decks, and they all ended up looking basically the same, which was 5-color green, where you're really prioritizing Humble Naturalist and Farfinder and dual lands, and just trying to play all the best creatures, especially because giving all those mutate creatures give you kind of spell-like effects where you have removal, you have interaction. And what your goal, you also want a lot of fairly expensive cards where you just go, ideally turn 3 Umori, turn 4, play 2 creatures or 1 really big creature.
Yeah, like you said, with Naturalists, that happens a lot. Like goes really well in this deck just because it is a creature and pumps out the Umori, because you can have dumb draws. Like if you get turn 3 Umori and get to untap, it is really powerful. Yeah. And it's just
also Naturalist taps for any color. So it helps you splash really nicely. And like one of my best Umori decks had Snapdax in it, the Apex that deals 4. And like you end up with a lot of mutate cards. And another card which goes really well with a number of companions is Frostlinks.
I was going to actually mention that too. Yeah.
it's the best card with Karuga, and it's really good with Umori. Like, it's the exact kind of card you want to just slow the game down and let you get the companion value and pressure the opponent.
That's one thing that you'll note, of course, when you build a deck that's all creatures, is that you don't get access to removal spells that are like spells, like, sorcery, kill a thing, instant speed, kill a thing. So you do need to backload that a little bit. Frostlinks is one of the best ways to do it. Blitzleech also does a job. If you can find ways to use your creatures as removal, those do take priority, because you do need to interact with your opponent's board usually to win most games of limited. If all you do is play Umori and just play a bunch of beef, you might be able to get by them, but there's a good chance that they're going to play something that you do need to at least interact with. And like you said, Frostlinks is one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes your opponent, puts Porky Parrot onto a Boot Nibbler and has a Death Touch Pinger, and it's like, I mean, Frostlinks isn't just going to get you out of it, but it'll delay it at least, and these are the kind of things you are weak to. Next, I've got Karuga the Hippo. This is the 3 and 2 Simic hybrid mana, so blue-green. For a 5-mana 5/4, says you can't play cards that cost less than 3. Slow and steady wins the race, and then then when it enters the battlefield, draws you a card for each of your other permanents that cost 3 or more. And Karuga just needs Frostlinks as many as it can get, because this deck's slow, but effectively starts the game with 3 extra cards or 4 extra cards. So the punishment is you can't play things early. I would expect in a Karuga deck also to cycle on turn 2 most games. I prioritize cyclers, because when you don't have any 1 or 2 drops, it is much less of a cost to have cycling on a card. It's almost free, and these cards are all good anyway. And then for Karuga, you really just want good board affecting plays that start on 3 and ways to not be dead, because you'll win most games where you don't die, because we're like immediately, because Karuga is going to come down and draw you 3 extra cards. You're going to start the game with 50% more cards than your opponent in your opening hand. That's just insane. Yeah.
And you need to be able to win that grind. That's the key.
Yeah. And then Lurrus is the last of the like tier one companions. And this is the 3 mana, 1 and 2 Orzhov mana, the white black companion, 3 mana, 3/2 lifelink. And then it asks you to play only permanents that cost 2 or less. So spells can cost whatever, but your permanents all have to cost 2 or less. Then every turn it lets you replay one of those permanents, permanent that costs 2 or less, from your graveyard once a turn. So the Lurrus decks basically want Springdraw Trap, they want Whisper Squad, they want Serrated Scorpion, they want Weaponize the Monsters is one of the best Lurrus cards, the enchantment that lets you sack creatures. It only costs 1 mana. And then it wants good removal spells. So the Lurrus decks love like Blood Curdles and stuff like that. So what you're trying to do with Lurrus is put some stuff on the board, kill their stuff, then play Lurrus and replay something. I almost never play Lurrus if I can't play something in the same turn. Like, there's just no way for your opponent to stop that, and getting that extra value is just so huge.
Yeah, Lurrus is fragile with only 2 toughness and being a premium target for removal. It will die.
Another card that's fantastic in the Lurrus decks is Corpse Churn, because it does so many things. First of all, it mills you, which gives you more other Lurrus targets, like milling your Springdraw Trap with this is fantastic, and it lets you get Lurrus back. So yes, you're right. Lurrus is vulnerable to removal. Guess what? When you play Lurrus, replay a card, they kill Lurrus, then you're like Corpse Churn, replay Lurrus, replay a card. You've just buried them. You're up so many cards.
Yeah. The uncommon one's fine with it too. The get back a 3-drop or less.
Oh yeah. Call of the Death Dweller is also quite good. Yeah. Also, I'm going to needle you here a little. It's actually funny, without events for you to cover, you don't know the card names as well as you normally do.
No, dude, I don't at all. Normally I would have like studied them all, and now I'm just in full 3-drop, blah blah blah.
We're on the full on mode of where I can see you say, the 3-drop that does this, like, because the cards, you just don't know all the names.
I know, it's really bad. It's like
I've just been writing draft guides, so I have to learn the names, but
learn them quicker anyway. But
so then the tier 2 companions, and again, don't mistake these for not being excellent. They're just not as good as the extra excellent cards. Yorion, I initially had this one as tier 1. This is the Azorius companion, 3 and 2 blue-white mana, so 5 mana for a 4/5 flyer, and then when it enters the battlefield, it lets you blink any number of non-land permanents, so that they exile and come back end of turn. And it asks you to play 20 more cards than in your starting deck. So for limited, that's 60 cards, which also is relatively more than constructed. Like, it's a bigger cost in limited. Yeah. You're adding 50% instead of 33%. But Yorion I found to be good, but there are some decks that if you have to play too much crap, it starts to not be worth it. And so it's one of the ones that's hardest to get a deck for, especially if you get it later. And sometimes you end up moving away from that. Cycling a big thing here too, because one way to mitigate the effect is to play a bunch of off-color cyclers. As a result, I end up playing a little bit less lands. Like I play closer to like 24 lands instead of if you kind of use the same ratio, you'd end up closer to 26, 27. Mm-hmm. But I like, 25 to 27, but I like playing 23 or 24 or 5 a lot of 1 mana cyclers, because that's how you kind of get to 60 without being in the complete open lane where you just get all playables. Mm-hmm. You just play off-color cyclers to get to 60. And, Yorion is good. And what you're trying to do with Yorion, of course, is to have good enter the battlefield effects. Part of the thing that's dampened Yorion a little is that this just isn't a set for that. No. All ETB effects are effectively mutates.
Yeah, it's mutate.
So yeah, blinking your Farfinder is nice. Moving pacifism around can be nice, but there's no like ETB bounce or ETB kill. Those are all on mutate cards. So yeah, you got Frostlinks again as your best target.
Yeah, I actually do have Yorion in the upper tier by a bit. What I've done, though, is just play 3 colors. I've had Yorion twice, and I've just decided to play 3 colors because that opens up the possibilities for a lot more playables. But you do have to backstock that primarily with green so that you can make sure to cast all of the different stuff that you need to cast, or maybe some crystals or some of the tri-lands or whatever you can pick up for fixing. And I like Yorion because of being a 4/5 flying the most. I agree. I have rarely even gotten a full card worth of value back after having cast Yorion. That dream doesn't happen very often, but the fact that Yorion's a 4/5 is a big game. I mean, this is one of the better bodies you can get, is the 4/5 flyer compared to the others. So yeah, I do have Yorion in the top tier.
It is. I think one of the biggest impacts there, and I think that it's very close. I think it's worse than all the other ones in the top tier, but I could see it being a high priority. But again, I'm not even saying that the tier 2 ones you shouldn't build around. I'm just saying, like, if I open an Obosh, this is going to be my companion unless something goes really weird.
Right.
I don't feel quite the same about Yorion, but I think that it's pretty close.
Well, Yorion questions your level of commitment then.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Next up, we've got Lutri, the otter, the Izzet one. So it's 1 + 2 blue-red mana. So 3 mana, 3/2 flash. When it enters the battlefield, it copies an instant or sorcery spell that you control, and you can choose new targets. And it asks you to play only singleton outside of lands, which it's funny. Initially, we're like, oh yeah, this one's free. How dumb is that? Ha ha ha. Mm-hmm. It's not, though. I actually find that this is one of the ones that I'm more likely to cut. And part of that is because red-white cycling is so good and I'm often in that deck. The red-white cycling deck really can't be singleton. That's just not how the deck works.
No.
Like, it's just, you can't, you need too many multiples between cyclers and snare tacticians and whatever. Outside of that, I'd move Lutri up, but this is a set that has pretty linear themes and rewards multiples of the same card. So I'm actually cutting this at a higher rate from my companion slot than I would expect to have from the beginning.
Okay,
but it's still very good. It's still a good card, and I think you're going to end up wanting to be there most of the time. But again, it's not a windmill slam in that same way. Though I would still first pick the card. It's still an A-level card. Mm-hmm. And then next up, the last 2 are basically about the same. I think Kahira is slightly better than Zerda, so we'll start there. Kahira is the green-white one, so it's 1 + 2 green-white mana for a 3 mana, 3/2 vigilance. It asks all the creatures in your deck to be cats, elementals, beasts, dinosaurs, or nightmares. All right, I did that from memory, so let me see if that was right.
That was exactly right. That was exactly right. I just brought the card up. Nice. Yeah. Well done.
And what it does is it gives all your other creatures it's of those types +1/+1 in vigilance, and then you can play this as a companion. And again, Kahira is not the most impactful playing as your companion. You're giving up humans is the big thing you're giving up, and It works with every mutate creature except Vulpikeet and a couple of the like higher rarity ones. I think like Archipelagore and some of the rares, but. Mm-hmm. So when you end up with Kahira, you end up, I think, a lot of the time being you're most likely to play it off green mana because white is the heavier human color. So there's just not that many like white-black decks that can successfully companion Kahira. But something like blue-green mutate, it's very good in that deck. And the fact that it gives all the rest of your creatures, by definition, if you've companioned it, +1/+1 and vigilance is pretty strong. So Kahira is definitely one that I found worth building towards, but it's not as impactful as like the upper tier. And then the last
bizarre card, by the way, just weird. Like that
you want
collection of creature types is like, huh?
Well, I haven't really touched on what Companion does in Constructed. I don't really like it in older formats, to be honest. I'm still kind of on the fence for Standard. But one of the things that's ridiculous is I was playing blue-white in Pioneer tonight, blue-white control. I love that deck.
Yeah.
And you want to know what I got from the new set?
What did he get?
Kahira in the sideboard. It doesn't play any creatures, so it can free roll Kahira. The cost of a sideboard slot is so much less than getting a free 3-mana 3/2, which lets you just make a random play on turn 3, threaten their planeswalkers, trade with their 2-drop. Like, it's just, that does not feel right to me. That
this is not what Companion is supposed to be about. Yeah.
Yeah. Come here, Companion. Pump up all my other 0 creatures, but you're good at chump blocking.
And you're basically free. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
But and then last we've got Zerda. This is the red-white Companion. It's 1 + 2 red-white mana, 3 mana 3/3. It asks that all your permanents have activated abilities, and that actually includes lands because they intrinsically do, which is tapping for mana. So, and cycling counts too. So something like Imposing Vantasaur, 6 mana 3/6 with cycling 1, that counts cycling as an activated ability. The main issue I have with Zerda is giving up Prickly Marmoset and Snare Tactician. Those two are pretty big. Reptilian Reflection as well. So I have played this in red-white cycling, but I think like you're like closer to like 30% of the time making it work rather than like 80%. Still very good. A free card's still good. A 3 mana 3/3 is still good. That also can tap to make one of their creatures unable to block. So I think Zerda is okay. The problem I have is cycling is such a linear deck that if you start going down the Zerda path and then don't get there, you probably got punished significantly.
And it does seem that this format doesn't lend itself to like normal red-white aggro or whatever, right? No, like it is the cycling deck. So yeah.
But still, Zerda's pretty strong, and I've liked Zerda more in these like 3 or 4 or 5 color like ultimatum-ish decks, whether you have the actual ultimatums or not, because there you can like play, your crystals that have activated abilities, your sandworms, your humble naturalists, and whatever other nonsense, and just use Zerda as like a free good value card.
Mm-hmm. So, what about overall for companions? Are you worried about this stuff?
For limited? No.
Yeah, for limited.
Look, they're really strong. I think that this is going to have a big impact on the set. This is. I mean, I guess it sounds ridiculous if I say it's kind of like putting 10 Glory Bringers in the set, which is kind of what it is. But here's what I like. And I know this might grow old, and I know in 3 weeks my opinion could be different. I have enjoyed building around the constraints of these decks, discovering stuff like, wow, Obosh really rewards combat tricks, or wow, Springdraw Trap, a crappy common, is good in all these companion decks. And I haven't gotten a chance to draft with Luris as many times as I'd want. I've only had Luris once, and I had a blast. It's so fun trying to make it. How can I win the game with my highest cost being 2? Like, that's one of the more interesting puzzles to figure out, So yeah. I like companions. I think that they offer a cool new angle. I do think it can be a little bit oppressive in terms of when we start the match and my opponent's like, hey, I've got a Giganta. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be hard. Or like, oh, look, I've got a Gyruda. That I mean, again, Obosh and Gyruda, I think if we had to split into 3 tiers, they would be tier 1. I think those are the 2 that at least to me seem to be the best. But yes, your opponents having good cards can be tough, and it's tough when they always draw their good cards. Imagine if Glorybringer was a companion, right? You play against Glorybringer, at least you hope, wow, they smashed me with that game 1, but hey, you know what? Maybe games 2 and 3 is just going to be the bottom 5 cards of their deck both games, and we'll get to play a match. Companions don't work that way, right. But you do have some solutions. The more expensive one, Gyruda, Giganta, Obosh, if you're playing blue and you have Essence Scatter or Neutralize or even Convolute, like you can figure that out. And if you're playing with those companions against blue and they leave 3 mana up on your turn 5, just please just cast anything else. If the board lets you cast anything else and not die, just cast anything else. You'll see that pause. You'll see them sigh and convolute your rooting Moloch, because like they can't just do nothing. You can't win a game of limited where you do that. But then you get to play Obosh next turn.
Yeah, and hopefully they don't have the answer then. Yeah, my biggest concern is the repeatability. There's a lot of reasons to love limited, and one of my absolute favorites is the fact that the games play out in significantly different ways so commonly. And I would just be worried that something as consistent and powerful as getting that companion going, even with the cost that you have to pay, which is significant in most cases, will reduce that variability too much, right? Where I'll play a game and I'll go, well, this game would have been really interesting, but you had Gyruda and you played it on turn 6, and I knew that was going to happen, and you knew that was going to happen, and you won because of it. So let's do it again. And it's like, well, we had a really interesting game going, but guess what happened, right? And I can like fill in the blanks for this over the course of time. And on the ones that are particularly broken, I do think that it would just reduce my interest. It would make it boring for me, right? I like not knowing what's going to happen in a game, and information is revealed in that way. I don't like it, and I certainly don't like the idea of reducing that variability. So that's the thing I'm concerned about, more so than power level, even though the power level's legitimate.
The way I see it is Magic's an evolving game, and they rightfully try new things every set.
Yeah,
I would not like it if companions were in every set. In fact, I would hate it. But can I live with one set having 10 companions for limited?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Do I think some of these should be banned in limited in constructed formats? Yes. But that's neither here nor there. I think for limited, I believe it's a positive that these companions exist. I think that they add something to the format. I would not want to run it back. And maybe in a couple of weeks, I'll have changed my mind. I don't think. Yeah. I don't think it's good if you never change your mind on things. It means you're not really processing new information. But if you had to ask me how I feel about companions right now, it's positive. I get all the downsides. I'm very aware of them, but I think that it's cool finding reasons to play a 60 card limited deck or an all creature limited deck, or those kind of things are cool. Like I like that. That gives you something new. Do I want to play against Obosh 7 times in the next week? No, I definitely do not.
All right. Well, we'll check back in on this as the format develops and as we develop our opinions on the format. Of course, let's call it a show there, Luis. Good stuff. Again, broad strokes, just getting right into the format rundown here so that you have an idea of the big hitters in the format when you sit down to do your next draft, wherever that may be. And cycling deck, this is an all-timer. I do believe like this is not a week 1 deck.
This is going to – when we have an Ikoria flashback draft in a couple of years, everyone's going to be trying to jam the cycling deck. When it's kind of like spider spawning in Innistrad. Like the first thing that happens when there's a flashback is there's me, you, BDM, all in that first draft pot, all second picking Armored Scobs or whatever, and it's just going to be complete nonsense. But I think that there's a lot to explore in this format. The cycling deck, I think, they did overshoot on it. It is actually a negative. Like this is actually worse than the companions for me, because when you just always feel like every time you draft a non-cycling deck, you always feel like, I know if I play against this, I'm going to lose. Like I don't remember ever having that feeling about an archetype in limited before, really. Like it's really tough to imagine kind of where like what other formats where I'm like, wow, if they have a good blue-red spells deck, I mean, it's never something that I've really felt that I really felt is quite the same level as this red-white cycling deck. So I'm kind of interested in exploring the format kind of without this deck, but just be aware that this deck exists and is going to be out there.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Limited Resources. Thanks so much for hanging out and joining us. We love that you come hang out and talk a little Magic, a little Limited, a little life improvement stuff every week with us. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com, including all the old episodes. And don't forget there are video versions of the show that go up as well. On the LR YouTube channel. So it's just Limited Resources on YouTube. And, those include card images and stuff. So if you happen to be sitting at your computer and you'd rather look at it, you can see card images, and we've been streaming it as well, so you can actually see us. So hi, and Channel Fireball. Don't forget about Channel Fireball. CFB Pro is now live. Anything cool coming up on CFB Pro for people, Luis?
We're really cranking out the deck guides, and we're starting to fill out older formats. Staying on top of standard is actually pretty challenging, and the team every day is just scouring for good deck lists and writing deck guides, playing out these decks. The normal day is Huey's gonna, he hops on stream, plays a deck all day, and then writes a deck guide that night. So if you're trying to keep up on standard, I really cannot emphasize how much we've gotten deck guides up for all the good decks. And then for older formats, I've started, like I mentioned earlier, dive into Pioneer. I'm going to do legacy ones this week as well. So we're really taking this seriously and getting guides out for all the decks in all the formats. And if there's something you want to see on CFP Pro or any feedback, you can always tweet at me, LSV on Twitter, or lsv@channelfireball.com via email. Love to hear feedback.
Yeah, and Luis means that too. Like, when you put new stuff out into the world, you're going to get a full range of feedback, and Luis reads it all. So tell him what you think. And, CFB is here to serve you in this way, right? The kind of content that you want to see is the kind of content that they want to make. So let them know. That's going to do it for this episode of the show. We'll see you next week.
So what I said, that's neither here nor there on my constructed thoughts on companions. I actually kind of wanted to dive into it because
I like
we've been talking about companions all show. So
the people love it when we do little mini CR also.
Oh yeah, for sure. So for standard, I'm not ready to say companions are having a huge negative effect on standard. I think Fires of Invention is stressing standard a lot because that card's ridiculous and kind of makes you not care about casting costs in a weird way. But as for companions, Karuga's great in Fires, and Yorion is good in value decks. But people playing 80 card decks is cool. Like, you get to see people playing cards like Omen of the Hunt or Omen of the Sun or, various random removal spells. And whenever I look at standard deck lists and I see a card that's a little weird, I go look at how many cards are in the deck. I'm like, yep, it's an 80 card deck. And I think that's cool. Like, it lets cards that haven't seen play get played, right? I think the Luris and Obosh decks are really, really cool. I think those actually add a lot to the format. Just, giving, like, this isn't limited. Your opponent playing a Luris is not unbeatable. And it doesn't feel like too much. Standard's got a lot of powerful stuff going on. So I have liked their effect in Standard. When it comes to older formats, I would ban Luris in Vintage and Legacy, straight up. I think that Luris saying, hey, don't play cards that cost more than 2 that are permanents is just a ridiculously trivial ask. These formats are all about 1 and 2 mana cards anyway. Yeah. And you know what? As an avid Vintage fan, you know what we didn't need? We didn't need Black Lotus getting better. Like, that's not a card that needed help. Oh, great. Your Demonic Tutors and Black Lotuses are really busted now. They were good before, but like now they're busted because Lotus Luris is just obscene. Oh, Lotus, play Luris, replay Lotus. Like, I have not liked the effect of this. And like, I remember the last Vintage League I played, I think I played like 3 Luris decks in a row. And it's, out of 5. And the last Vintage Challenge, I played 4 Luris decks before dropping or something like that. So I don't like the effect that's having. I would ban Luris, but the rest, I think, like, look, Zerda combo decks are cool, and Yorion decks in like Modern and Pioneer and even Legacy. I made a Yorion Legacy video. That was sweet. I actually really like that. So I'm overall higher on companions than some people, or than a lot of people. Or some people are talking about how bad they are and how they should all be banned and the companion rules nonsense. I'm not ready to go there yet. I would ban Luris, like I said. The rest I would keep in all formats for now, but on a watch list. I think that there is certainly danger here, and maybe it is foolish, and maybe in a month, like I said, I'll be like, yeah, what was I thinking? Companions are nonsense. But for right now, I don't know. They had interesting variants to kind of what cards see play and how the games play out. The biggest downside is they're there every game. So when they get old, they get old. They get real old. And
really old.
and that's the biggest danger. So I'm not looking forward to another 2 years of these in Standard and infinite years of these in older formats. But as long as as long as R&D is willing to ban cards in older formats, which they so far have, and have had to ban cards in standard. They've made a bunch of nonsense cards lately. As long as they're willing to utilize those tools, I'm okay with Companion.